Greetings, greetings. We have the great pleasure. This is Brightside Global Trade TV. I'm Elton Brewington and with Claire, Miss Kitty Brewington, and we have the good pleasure today to interview, discuss, and talk with a noted author, Mr. Lester Patrick. Of course, he's written the book Weak Start, Unapologetic, Present, and we're delighted to have him. He is a keynote author with incredible background and experiences and a length and wealth of points of discussions and relevant points of view. And we're going to probe into those today. We're going to talk about his book and talk about the origins of his discussions. This is going to be pretty outstanding. So we're excited. And today we have Mr. Lester Patrick, author, writer. Just say hi to our audience and a little bit about the book, if you will.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. As I was introduced, my name is Lester Patrick, and I first want to thank you guys for this opportunity for the interview. This is our second attempt, but I'm sure we're going to make it happen this time. And just to get started, just to give a quick high-level overview of the book, it's a book of my autobiography, of course, of my life. And I talk about the weak start that I had early in my childhood, some of the experiences living under Jim Crow. I go into some level of detail about some specific things that I think are very relevant for today. I also talk about my long career in information technology. I go into detail in the book. I talk about some of my spiritual experiences with God and my lifelong efforts in advocacy and volunteerism. That's a high-level overview of the things that I emphasized in the book.
Very good, very good. Lester, I mean, I'm looking at the title, and I mean, maybe there's something, when you talk about people when you get started, I mean, as an African-American minority, we don't have the comparative starts that many of our contemporaries might. But of course, in some ways, I've looked at my own personal beginnings as the closeness for me personally, and you can share where you are with that. The closeness of my family, people that I knew, and people that gave me levels of confidence beyond. Now we get levels of confidence beyond our contemporaries because people talk about you. People talk about you when you do wrong. They chastise you in a way that I think can make you strong. But tell me your points of view regarding that.
Well, the book is entitled Weak Start, Unapologetic Present, as you have already emphasized. And many of us do get a weak start. And I wanted to share my weak start with especially the newer generations of teenagers. I have a lot of exposure with mentoring some teens, and I think that part of my life can be beneficial for some to know. For example, I had to make a decision at a very early age as to who I was going to live with. At 5 years old, believe it or not. Not everybody is faced with that decision, I know, and most 5-year-olds are not ready to make that kind of a decision. But I made the decision, and I was correct in the decision that I made, and somehow I knew at the time that I was correct. So that was a very, very weak start, but it didn't stop there.
Your choices, though. Your choices. Look at you. You made the best choice, and and you're all the better for it. And I don't know. I mean, but I think probably it's just a question of great or better than great. but I don't know. You can talk on that if you want. But we start with and I guess in comparison, the whole idea for our programming, of course, is to gain traction, help our audience, viewers gain better traction. And, but when you're driving in 3 feet of snow and it's still snowing, traction is everything. Traction is everything because of course, and if you especially if you're in some kind of treacherous territory, you really want to make a good decision. So, but no, I saw that and I thought, okay, weak start. Okay, look at he looks like a very promising, intellectual, and I just needed to understand what you meant by that. But you're right, having to make the decision who you grow up with, that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
I should also add that along those same lines, I was a poor student from grades 1 through 5. But
Okay.
something happened that I talk about in the book around the 5th grade that caused me to become a good student. That I was motivated by fear. I'm not suggesting that is the best method of motivating kids to become interested in school. But the bottom line is that I did become interested in school, and I was a good student the rest of my time until I got what I talk about college later. But and I didn't know my any relatives on my father's side of the family. Sometimes people don't realize how much of a disadvantage that can be. It made, for example, for a very awkward situation for me, because I grew up in a very small town, and many other people understood or knew my relatives on my father's side, but I had no connection to them. And but I would see them from time to time. But again, no interaction, no connections at all. And again, that was a very weak start. There were times when I had to explain to other kids, for example, why my name was different, my last name was different than my aunt and uncle. Why they were Barretts and I was a Patriot, and all those kinds of things.
Right.
So that was not always a comfortable situation.
How did you handle that? You think?
Well, when I look back, I think that I sort of I put most of it out of my mind as best I could. There were certain situations where I was embarrassed by it, and I go into some. I describe at least one situation that has stood out to me most of my life that I had in school, and I named it "Who is your daddy?" And I talk about that story. That stuck in my mind for a very long time. And I know other people who have had similar situations, which is one of the reasons that I put that in the book. But one difference between then and today is that many kids who did not live with both parents were called illegitimate children.
Sure.
And we don't refer to kids that way today, but still, still there's a stigma. There's a stigma associated with kids who come from who don't live with their natural parents, and But again, I dealt with it, I think, by coping through knowing that I had a very strong family on my mother's side of the family, and I had two parents who, my uncle and my aunt, who loved me and who always gave me, showered me with encouragement. So,
Sure, sure.
that outweighed any of the negatives that came from not living with my parents.
Now, you make a very significant point in that even today, as it was yesterday, if you've got somebody who loves you, no matter what their station is, uncle, aunt, grandmother, grandfather, parent, mother or father, if you got
Hmm.
somebody that loves you, then you count. Meaning that, nobody can challenge your existence or right to be. This is true now, and it was true then. And so, what that means is a child can just about fight any retribution or persecution so long as they know that they have someone that loves them and will defend and protect their interests. It's only when the child doesn't have that they tend to start to question themselves. But
Absolutely.
you made the point. Yeah, yeah. Do you remember the embarrassment at that time?
I do.
Yeah, because
I remember
yeah.
the embarrassment, and I talk about it in the book. I talk about one incident where I was called before the class, and uh, that particular incident I named, "Who is your daddy?"
Mhm,
There's
mhm,
there-
mhm.
there's also a little humor that comes
Yeah.
through that story, and I try to paint the humor in such a way that it would cause, I guess, some kid who might have that same situation today to know that when you find yourselves in those kinds of situations, it's not the end of the world. It's
Yeah.
just
Well,
it's just a
this is a
moment.
very real point. Yeah, this is a very real dilemma, but it's different now because there's not that kind in maybe in smaller towns, but in bigger towns, people don't spend time persecuting children or youth or adults based on those elements. I mean, you got. I mean, so I'm just trying. So the book is about a rites of passage,
Yes.
a rites of existence, a right
Yes,
of
yeah.
finding your true self. I guess. Now there's some real traction for that. There's
Yeah.
real prospect for traction on that. And so this is and so from your point of view, what was the turning point? It was you say it was when you went to live with made the decision to live with another parent and that you grew up with and that gave you the power and the strength and the confidence to be who you
which which
revealed yourself.
actually comes to my question. So in
No, no,
part one,
okay,
you talk a lot about graduating from high school and the money for college, and then the role that Aunt Nellie played. So if you could tie Elton and my question, and then we can finish part one and go to part two.
Sure.
Because in those days, it was very hard for anybody to go to college. And so, given the weak start and given everything that you've been talking to us about, tell us a little bit about that. Tell us little bit about the role that your family played and Aunt Nellie's role and getting money to go to college. First of all, what made you want to go to college?
Well, I had relatives, cousins who lived next door, and they all, well, there were four, two girls and two boys. The boys were closer to my age, even though they were older. And so I had seen, this was after I started to live with my aunt and uncle, because again they lived next door. So I knew that I had to go to college, and I had to go to college because um, that's what they did. That's what I saw them do. I hung around them. I hung around my two cousins, and their nicknames, Dick and Skip, and they encouraged me. They were role models for me. They were good students in high school, um, and I tried to follow that lead, that pattern that they, you know, presented for me. And then, so when it came time to go to college, um, it was just a matter of doing what I knew I had to do. I had one cousin who would always check to see if I was where I needed to be as far as some of he was really a math whiz. So he was always concerned about whether or not I was prepared for math with the proper math um, concepts and those kinds of things. So he would always quiz me. He'd tutor me during the summer and on holidays when he would come home from A&T.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that I knew they were role models for me. I knew I was going to go to college. As far as the money is concerned, my biological mother, as I pointed out in the book, I didn't live with her. She left when I was about 3 or 4 years old and moved to New York. And she knew I was a good student, and she had promised that she was saving money for me to go to college. And I believe she was, but she ran into a problem. They had financial problems, uh, during that period, and she had to spend the money. And I learned the day before I was to graduate from high school that the money was not available. And I go into, I talk about how I learned that and what my reaction was and how my Aunt Nellie responded. And I only cited that example of how she responded, but that was her way throughout my life. She always did what she needed to do to make sure that I had what I needed to be successful. So the bottom line is that I won't go into the details of how we went about seeking the money to go to college, but the way she responded was the most important thing there, and she was not going to allow me not to go to college because there was no money available to go.
So now you brought us to a point, a crossroads, a critical crossroads, and I don't mean to labor that with particulars,
Sure.
but there is a question, and we'll come to the point of let's just tweak this with the opportunity to share with the audience that turning point. And of course, ultimately, you did go to college. That means you found the money and you graduated like that. And the impetus of what needs to be heard here is it sounds like your aunt decided that, and she took some action that would not leave your dreams and ambitions lay waste against the ground. And so, and I'm sure that has taught you something about the premise of what and how to succeed, and which is a very important element. But if you don't mind, at this particular juncture, share with us what you did, and of course, and we'll leave it there. But we want to tweak this as an interest, probably because the book is full of episodes of what you had to face, how you learned the prospect of, meeting your challenges to succeed.
And
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my aunt worked in a sewing factory, a shirt factory to be more specific, and she simply worked hard to make sure that I had my tuition and to make the payments on a monthly basis. She worked her fingers to the bone to send me to college. That was
Very
it.
good. Very good. Is your aunt still with you?
No, unfortunately, she passed away 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. Now that's a story in itself among our community that should be heard, should be felt, and is the inspiration for our community serving a greater good for other people, other youth in our community.
Like if every aunt would step up and help a nephew, think how many would go to college. I mean, that in itself is worth getting a copy of Lester's book, which is on our recommended list for this month. Next, let's get to part two, and this book is so long, so we'll have to really speed it up a little bit. But I love the way that you talk about college, and you begin with Scott Hall. And I think Elton and you can talk a lot about Scott Hall, but just that it was at the time of the civil rights movement. So tell us all about Scott Hall and what it meant to you and college.
Yeah, as I stated, Scott Hall was it was really a new experience for me. I heard a lot about it, and it was a famous dorm because it was at one time it claimed to be the largest dorm in that part of the country, and it housed roughly 1,100 men. I came from a small town of a population at that time of about 1,500 people. So when I moved into Scott Hall, I was moving into a dormitory with a group of African American men the size of my hometown, basically. And it was built like in the shape of an H. And I think it was 3 stories. And there were different personalities in each of the areas throughout the dormitory. I mean, totally different personality. There was an area where people enjoyed and were placed together for that reason, I'm sure, because they enjoyed certain things. They enjoyed doing certain things together and that kind of thing that bring communities together. And we had that community environment within Scott Hall. So moving from place to place throughout Scott Hall, you experienced all of those different communities. You had brothers singing, reciting poetry, dancing, loud music. And then there was some studying. But in general, it was a very fun place to be.
I remember. But as you're speaking about it, what comes to my mind is that, you know, you come from your own city, town, village community. And then when you see Scott Hall, it's a city. It's a city. And you're right. You make the comparison between it being a small city town with people from all over the country. And each one of them brings a perspective about life, humanity, our community, and those kind of things. And one of the few things, and it's amazing to me, during my time there were fights or brawls, but they didn't occur in the hall. I mean, there was an element of respect and community respect that is just, I mean, as I think about it now, was just predominant. It was predominant, and we accepted each other. We gave us liberty, and as long as each were respectful and formidable, then there was no challenge. We're all here for the same reason and purpose, and let's get that done. Let's get that done.
You're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. There was an enormous amount of respect that brothers gave towards each other. I talked, for example, about some of the guest lecturers. And one of the things I remember was how we used to debate after some of these lecturers, such as Carmichael and what have you. And
I remember him.
Yeah, views were different. There were usually two schools of thought. Some people simply thought that, I'm here to study, And
Yeah.
that's the way I'm going to overcome.
Right.
Others
Right.
others felt differently. You know, we're going to have to be uh, activists. We're going to have to become
Yeah.
educated, and we're going to have
Uh-huh.
to try and facilitate some of this ourselves as well. So that made
Right.
for some really healthy debates. But there was a lot of debating and discussions that were always going on throughout the dormitory anyway, about other and related
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot
Well,
to cover in the books, and
Yeah,
we can't probably go
I
explore
know.
into all of it, but there are a couple of key elements. But the element about Scott Hall and what we want to inspire people to do is, of course, buy the book, to read the book, and to become inspired about the legacy of experiences, as it were, from your experience, in college and school, and providing you with an habitual objective after graduation to work hard to perceive and procure, a pursuit vocation that you can serve the community with, which is an important aspect of what we're talking about in the book. And how can we help endeavor more of our students to capture this perspective? I think overall, and it's your book is not so. It is about our alma mater, but it's more about your experience and how you've used your experiences to transform you into a new person, or innovative thinker, or inspirational mind spirit that way. And I'm going to take just a few more minutes, and we'll explore those elements with the aspects of the topics that you think are important. But Scott Hall right there is a pinpoint, it's a marker to say, what you can do with what you have and what you can become from this day forward.
and for those
Absolutely.
of you watching this broadcast and don't know what Scott Hall is, perhaps, Lester, you can tell them about the North Carolina A&T University and what Scott Hall meant to the civil rights movement. Then we'll move a little bit into your military career. And I love the end of the book because you actually have a blueprint of your learnings that could help our communities today. And it's a blueprint for anyone who's got a community organization and even the White House. I think this is a must read for anyone who wants to try to make a dent into solving this problem that we have, or not a problem, but to just better our communities. So tell us a little bit about your military background, and then we'll go into the end of the book where you've given us this fantastic, because we really don't want to tell you the whole book. We want you to buy the book so you can read it for yourself. So
Right.
tell us a little bit about your military career, and then we'll go straight to the blueprint, and then we'll end the interview.
Sure. I enlisted in the Navy, and I was a radioman when I enlisted, and I became a radioman. I had no idea what it meant to be a radioman. I envisioned um, a person who basically took care of walkie-talkies and those kinds of things. However, once I attended school in Maryland, I realized that it was some of the most sophisticated form of communications available at the time. We were doing radio transmissions, uh, RF frequency setups for ships in the ocean, and low frequency setups for submarines at sea, and satellite communications. And we were just really, it was cutting edge um, communications. And so being part of that part of the Navy, I was able to do some travel overseas. I had 2 overseas duty stations. One of the duty stations was isolated duty in Morocco, where I worked at a radio transmission facility that was technically a secret base at the time, meaning that, and I talk about this in the book, that at the time, the facility that I was at, the Congress didn't even know that it was there. And I include the article. We provided radio frequency transmissions for ships in the ocean. We also provided communications for the embassy. We served as Radio Free Europe in that part of the world, and a relay station, I should say, for Radio Free Europe. And it was a very important location. It was, again, a secret location. We had lots of encounters with the Russians on a routine basis, because they had a facility just about a mile away in the desert. And I talk about that as well in the in the book. And I left there, and I went to the Philippines. I went to the Philippines, and I did some of the same type of work, but my job was different. But it was in the Philippines where I enjoyed my work, but it was in the Philippines when I really started to realize the importance of furthering my education. There was an opportunity there for me to work on my master's degree, and I did that. And also, it was in the Philippines when I came face to face with what I termed in the book international Jim Crow. Jim Crow that had been exported overseas by way of movies. And we formed an organization designed to counteract those activities. And I think, well, we were successful in counteracting those activities the couple of years that we were there. And I talk about some of those activities. I also emphasize, I won't, when I left the Philippines, I came to the United States here in Stockton. I was assigned to a data center here. And there was a lot of activity going on. I mean, truly cutting edge communications that I got involved with. And there were only a handful of us there. Sometimes you find yourself as an African American, and you just might be the chosen one. Where, and in my case, during that period, I was the chosen one at that location to get
what you were taught.
To get super duper training. Sent here and there to get the training. Unfortunately, there were some African Americans who did not get the training, and I was approached by one, and I felt really bad about it. And as a result of it, I tried to intercede on their behalf. But when I did, I became dirt, and I found myself in a real battle against the Navy. And I talk about that in detail because it was it was another turning point in my life, because I came face to face with what it's really like to give everything you have to survive. I was on the verge of being court-martialed.
Is that right?
Based on some false accusations that I didn't go into the details about the accusations themselves, but I described the situation. So anyway, I overcame that, but it was a battle.
I'll bet it was, and it sounds like, and these are some of the vestiges of a era of racism, sounds like, and you had to endure and overcome, and that was hidden to some extent for a long time because of your utter brilliance. And people, it's kind of like this, and I use this analogy, and it's a very real perspective. It's got in America when African Americans become very affluent and they become wealthy and they become, very influential, really. But the moment you take your promise and your visibility and your voice, trying to assist others with their affluence and development, then all of a sudden that whole mantle and platform is pulled from you. It's pulled from you. Oh, you have achieved, but you haven't.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting analogy, and I could see that. And you've probably taken now and that time to reevaluate. And good for you, though, Lester. Good for you. Yeah, it's an understanding, and it's a perception, and it's an awareness. And people, I would compare it to the glass ceiling. It is the glass ceiling.
Yeah.
You can see right through it, and then you attempt to ascend. Bang! It's real. It's real.
Right.
Good deal. I
yeah.
commend you for that.
So for those watching, the book is available everywhere. It's Weak Start, an Unapologetic Present by Lester Patrick. Make sure you get a copy. I know you're enthralled with this interview, and we don't want to take the thunder from the book, so we don't want to tell you the whole story. So we're just going through certain parts of Lester's life in the autobiography from the book. But to get the details and really get into the book, you might want to pick up a copy. It's available everywhere. So I'd like to go to the end of the book before we come back to that comment and tell us about the blueprint. But first, let's go back to Elton's comment, and then we'll wrap up with the end of the book.
Sure.
Good. Okay. Now, so, during the redress, I'm just trying to get an evaluation as a part of the book. I think many people, when they are faced with this glass ceiling and they bump their head and they thought that they were so widely accepted, it could be devastating. It could be so devastating that, man, why am I even trying? I won't be recognized for my real capability. And so, as it were, let me just take what I've gotten and pack my learnings and education away in a nice little package and box.
That is correct. One of the advantages that I had during that period of my life was that there was another gentleman, African-American gentleman in the Navy, who had been around for at least 20 years. And he'd seen everything. And he took it upon himself to mentor me. And he showed me things that were legal to do, but it simply were not done. They were just in the military code of justice, but you didn't do those things.
Okay.
And he coached me through doing some things that gave me protection to fight or help fight my way through the process. But he also warned me that it would make things worse in a way, and that I had to be very, very careful. And I did the whole period that I was there. But it did not stop even after I was at the location in Oakland where I was supposed to receive my discharge. There was still an attempt to ruin my life. And the whole objective was simply to make me an example for some of the other African Americans there, and to send a message to take what we give you and be happy. Yes, and shut up. Right. And I mean, that was the message, but it didn't work. And it was an experience that I did not see any value in at the time, but you know, I learned a lot from it.
Very good.
Very
Very
good.
good. So, in your book, at the finish, you do a framework of suggestions and solutions that you think our community could benefit from. And just give me a slight impetus of that and structure and the end result of the expectations that people can get from that.
Well, one of the primary things that I suggest to all in every community, particularly African Americans, is that we have to take it upon ourselves to advocate um, for the things that we know are causing problems in our communities. One
Mm-hmm.
of the things that is a major problem that we sometimes ignore is our young African American males need mentoring. A lot of people think that that requires a lot of time, but that's not necessarily so. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have to be structured. Sometimes uh, it can just be a situation where a male figure, African American male figure, makes himself available um,
Mm-hmm.
in situations where young African Americans find themselves in, and seeing how they behave, how they respond to certain things can be can go way beyond what sometimes we might think. So I would encourage, particularly African American males, to make yourself available. Um, make yourself available. Sometimes you can just, for example, attend some basketball games, for example, or some other sporting events where African American kids uh, uh, support them. Uh, that might lead to some personal involvement, or you can approach schools, making
Mm-hmm.
yourselves available uh,
Mm-hmm.
as often as you can. But also,
Mm-hmm.
I would strongly urge African Americans in particular to advocate uh, uh, for those in need in
Mm-hmm.
our communities.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of social um, issues that we have to deal with, and there are a
Mm-hmm.
number of ways that we can deal with them. Some people have writing skills. It's not a big deal to express what you know is right
Mm-hmm.
in the opinion section of the newspaper. You'd be surprised how
Mm-hmm.
much of a difference it can make. Showing
Yeah.
up at school boards, for example,
Mm-hmm.
when you know things are not, some kids are not being treated fairly. African American kids, for example, males in particular, uh, in a particular school district here, we found were being suspended and expelled 7 times uh, more often
Mm-hmm.
than other kids from other
Yeah.
races. Uh, there are certain things that can be put in place in those kinds of situations that can help those kids. And
Mm-hmm.
one of them is simply bringing it to the attention of the administrators that this is a problem and we care about it. And you'd
Mm-hmm.
be surprised how things start to change. It's always best when you know that there's a problem to have a solution. So when you present or you approach um, any of the people who you're going to be dealing with, whether it's the city, the county, or a school district, cite the problem, but always be prepared with a solution. Doesn't mean that your solution will always be adopted, but in most cases, some part of it will be. And it also shows that you're not just complaining, that you are
Mm-hmm.
concerned and you're looking forward to trying to get the problem corrected. And lastly, one of the things that I also cited was, maybe I shouldn't, I also stated that a lot of people my age have overcome um, the impact of Jim Crow. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I say that because we have had a lot of opportunities to hate because we've experienced a lot of opposition. We've experienced a
Mm-hmm.
lot of struggles. So there's been a lot of opportunities for us to hate. But I've learned over the years that we can't take that position. And
No, no.
yeah,
It's
because
unfortunate.
when we do, we lose. So
Mm-hmm.
for
Every
those who, right, so for those who want to do that, I advise you to go back to the drawing board because it
Mm-hmm. Well,
that doesn't
yeah,
work.
words
Yeah.
well. That's the words well said. And you've hit a couple of points that I think are important to remember, reflect, and because when I was telling someone this today, is that your power. It's all about your power, your personal power. And when you're challenged by a particular opposition, you've got to manage your own power. And if I mean, we're equal to any challenge, and consequently, your fight and your objectives now seem probably clearer. And I have to give you credit for writing the book because the book can serve as a purpose binder. Our community needs special purposes. I don't know what you're thinking of in terms of the story. People, you've heard the story. I had to say this. No, I won't say it. But the point of it is that book and learning, training, and awareness mean all the world to our community. It means so much of an importance that our experiences are bound together, and so we can achieve so much when we understand what our obstacles are and what we can achieve over time as long as we continue to work and bind ourselves to our success.
So there you have it. This is a fantastic book, and it'll inspire you to be a better person, to help the community. It has a blueprint for community organizer leaders, for even for our congressional house, White House, anybody in a leadership capacity. Even if you have a corporation and you're in human resources, diversity training, I can see a number of people that I'd like to make sure that you get to read this book. The book is available everywhere, whether you want to buy it for your own personal need. And Aggies, North Carolina A&T University, we talked about Scott Hall. This is a must-have book for you and your groups and your alumni. And anytime you want a speaker, Lester Patrick is available, and the book is available everywhere. This will be one of the books that we will have on our reading list for the Brightside Club. And you can also read our reviews that should be coming up in July. And so we hope that you will read this book recommended by us. Thank
You're
you
very good.
for watching.
Thank you for this
And
episode. Thank you, Lester, for participating in our online interview regarding your book. I expect great things to happen because of this, and the word will get out. The people will understand, the people will see, and the week start unapologetic present is a mantra that we know will get great attention.
would you like to end with a few words before I close out the interview?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to get the word out about the book. And I would close by saying to young people and adults, uh, don't allow anybody to decide for you the image or the person who you want to be. You're in control of that. I would say to adults to take the opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, to mentor or to invest some time in some young people. And everybody, advocate for those who are not capable of advocating for themselves. And you just look around your community, you see them. And that's it.
Very
That's
good.
it.
Very
So
good.
there you go. The book is available everywhere. And if you're watching this video, you like this episode, you want to get 2 free tickets to our next conference, write us a comment. And if you do buy Les's book, snap a photo so we know that you saw it and you're a fan of his just as much as we are. Thank you for watching.